So let's talk about the Denver Nuggets. I know that recently we've been talking a lot about franchises and what they need to do, what they need to change, and what is wrong with them. But I mean, in this video, I think is going to be more of a positive note because we're going to be talking about Denver and a very stable franchise which has a phenomenal supporting cast, phenomenal, you know, people around them, and they've really, always maximized their players and made the best of them all time. Like, even if we see the past, right, they've had players like David Thompson, Alex English, and Carmelo Anthony, which all they gave them championship level teams, right? They always gave them great supporting cast to take them far into the playoffs. It's just that those stars never materialized the team with the teams that they were given. But the Denver Nuggets are champions, and that's something that we have to take into account. They've been a very successful franchise, and that's through Nikola Jokic, that's through Coach Mike Malone, which I believe is a phenomenal coach. And in my opinion, that's through their commitment to the squad which they have right now. They have not made any big moves. They had 2 seasons which were below average, and they still kept their guys and haven't, switched up on them in terms of they haven't went out and made any blockbuster trades to make it work. They've stuck with their guys, and they've been an A-class franchise. What I want to talk about with the Denver Nuggets is, can you repeat a championship? Is that possible? Right? Like, you have all the tools. You have a team which just won it, right? But as we've seen in the modern NBA, that's not so easy to just say, right? Like, look at the past 4 teams which have won the championship, right? The Golden State Warriors, and I'm naming them in order, and I'm going in backwards order. The Golden State Warriors, right? The Milwaukee Bucks, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Toronto Raptors. When we look at those 4 teams, we realize that none of them have even been close to coming back to the finals. And when I mean close, is that none of them have reached even the conference finals after they won their championship. And there's something to be said about that, right? The fact that all of these teams, which got to the highest level now can't even compete, right, is insane to me. And by the way, I know a lot of people are going to say, but the Lakers just reached the conference finals last year. And what I would say to that is they had to change up their entire roster to get back there, right? It is not the same roster which it was in 2020. I understand it is the same core. It's LeBron and Anthony Davis. But if we're talking about those teams, how they stand, it's like these teams have had to make extreme adjustments just to even try to get to the finals again. And in my opinion, that this has a lot to do with how the modern NBA works. The modern NBA, even though it is good, there has been a lack of homegrown talent when it comes to building championships, right? And what I mean by that is, like, look at the Warriors with, right? Like, everyone thinks that they don't need a homegrown superstar to win. Even though, yes, each team has a superstar which they can rely on, it seems like if teams don't win a championship for one year, they'll just change up their entire franchise, right? And not leave the guys who have been there for a while. We saw this especially with a team like Milwaukee, where even though their 3 stars stayed, right, which were Drew Holiday, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Chris Middleton, you saw that as soon as they failed to even make the conference finals 2 years in a row, they got Jay Crowder. They've changed their lineup. They drafted Marjane Belchamp and are trying to include him in the lineup. And they got rid and took in some players. And it's obviously all in the purpose of winning another championship with Giannis on the team. And in my opinion, this is where the Denver Nuggets have been successful. The Denver Nuggets have been wanting to compete for a championship since the start of their franchise. They've never been a team which has wanted to tank. And you could tell because they never really had any losing seasons where they were purposefully losing, you know what I'm saying? And if they were losing, it was due to the fact that they were going to get a high draft pick the next season. We saw this when they got Carmelo. You know, we've seen this recently that they've drafted Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., which were high draft picks, or at least they traded for them to the Timberwolves. And in my opinion, what we really have to see is that even if all these teams, you know, have stayed or not changed anything, the Denver Nuggets have been the only team which have cared about chemistry and consistency. And the reason why I say that is because it feels like it is a foreign concept in the NBA for a team who doesn't win one season or has a bad season to not trade away all of their role players in their entire franchise. And in my opinion, that's wrong. You see, with the Denver Nuggets, they've had some key pieces, right? And the only thing that they've maybe done is, you know, make an upgrade here, you know, maybe lose a player there. But they have Christian Braun, which was drafted by them and is still on the team, you know. They got Bruce Brown for a season, and he was a huge contributor for that championship, right? We've seen players like we've seen players of them like DeAndre Jordan who have just loved being in Denver and have always wanted to, you know, and have always been a contributor in terms of the team's morale and how they get along together. And in my opinion, when you see something like this from a franchise, you know, a franchise which only changes certain pieces depending on what their needs are, you know, like they got Monte Morris in the season where Jamal Murray couldn't play, so then they traded him afterwards for a Smith, and then, you know, it all works the same way. And in my opinion, we have to applaud the Nuggets. The Nuggets are a team which have consistently been one of the most organized and stand up franchises in this league. They are a team which has always been phenomenal at keeping players and knowing which players fit for their franchise, and they've done all of this meanwhile keeping their starting five right intact. And in my opinion, that just goes to show that the Denver Nuggets are a great team. They are a masterclass of a franchise as they've managed to keep most of their players. They've managed to consistently be good. And even when their team doesn't win for a season, it's not like they pout or they cry and they try to turn their whole team around. They'll maybe make some moves and they'll digress until they get another opportunity when their stars are fully healthy. And in my opinion, that's a lost art in the NBA. Patience, as much as it hurts, because when you have a superstar, there's limited time on championships. But let's face it, Kobe didn't win every year. Michael Jordan had to wait like 10 years to win because it took like 11 years to find him, Scottie, Phil Jackson as that those three people could win. And in my opinion, that's a lost art, right? Like we've seen that. Of course, recently you lost Bruce Brown, which obviously is a big hit because Bruce Brown provides great defense. He's just a guy who's a veteran and he knows what to do. But he's a veteran who's young enough to have the body of a young dude. So he has the brain of where he's been to the playoffs. He knows how to perform. He knows to play his role. He doesn't get stressed in big moments, right? But also, he doesn't get too full of himself. He doesn't need the ball as much. All Bruce Brown is just a great young veteran, right? We've seen guys like this throughout the league, right? And we mostly see those qualities in superstars who are forced to be veterans when they're very young. But another like young veteran, which we can see is like an Andrew Wiggins, because even though Andrew Wiggins has been in the league for a long time, and yes, he's been phenomenal in this league for a long time, right? Or at least been a player who has been awesome. Now he's on the Warriors. He's a great contributor, and he's got an extremely good mind, you see, and that's another player which we could see where it's like they're not old yet, and it's not like they're in the prime of their career, but they still got the mind and the experience of a veteran. I say all of this to say that even though it's a tough loss, shout out to the Nuggets. They've managed to do it every year. And in my opinion, they're one of the best teams in the league. I just wanted to congratulate them for everything. I wanted to say that when you got the best player in the world and you find a way to fix his defensive problems with a way without trading anybody or making any big moves, in my opinion, that is beautiful, right? And that is what phenomenal coaching should do because it's what happened with Steph, it's what happened with KD, and every player which has a deficiency, your coach should be able to fix that without having to make any blockbuster trades to fix it. In my opinion, the Denver is phenomenal. They'll probably go back to the conference finals or win a championship next year, and I'm just excited to see what they do. Yeah.